Hello, friends. I've been getting a lot of requests for some topics which we can quickly revise for the exam, which is just round the corner on 5th. So I've compiled a very short list of must-know topics for you, which you cannot afford to miss before you go for the exam. So please make sure you have these topics well covered for you before you go for the exam. All right, so the last minute revision points for you, which have to be covered without fail. All right, so by far the most important topic which has to be covered from end to end would be vitamins, with particular focus on how to identify the deficiency. Some enzyme is mentioned, some product in the urine is mentioned, so some product in the blood is mentioned, with which we can identify the vitamin deficiency. For example, the activity of erythrocyte transketolase for B1, erythrocyte glutathione reductase for vitamin B2, the erythrocyte transaminases for B6, the presence of methylmalonic acid in the urine, methylmalonic aciduria for B12, the presence of undercarboxylated osteocalcin for vitamin K deficiency. So like that, you should be able to identify the deficiency. Then which enzymes require the vitamin? Okay, wherever the vitamin is required as the coenzyme for the enzymatic activity, that is another part which you have to keep in mind. And if any special features are there for the vitamin, then you have to know, for example, in case of vitamin D, the synthesis occurs in the body. The various organs involved include the skin, liver, and the kidney in that particular order. So any special feature for that particular vitamin, you should know. Similarly, for niacin also, synthesized from tryptophan, 16 milligram of tryptophan is required to make 1 milligram of niacin. So those are some additional points which you have to know. But overall, vitamins is very, very, very important. Lots of clinical cases we are seeing from the vitamins where they give a clinical scenario, the clinical features of the deficiency will be given, and based on that, you have to identify the deficiency. Sometimes they will give you the hint in by mentioning how to identify the deficiency. So there also how to identify the deficiency hint is sometimes there in the question, which will help you to narrow down which vitamin are we talking about. Then we have the associated type of anemia for some of the vitamins, which is another important question you should know, particularly for the B3, B6, B9, B12, vitamin C. All of these are associated with different types of anemia, which you should know. Obviously, I mentioned clinical features of deficiency will come as the clinical case, which you have to know in detail. So vitamins is one very, very important topic. Lots of questions every time, 4 to 5 questions coming from vitamins in the biochemistry section out of anywhere between 18 to 24 questions. So that's a big chunk. 4 questions from one single topic. That makes it a must revise section. You cannot afford to miss the vitamin section. Then other must know topics. Generally, you make a table showing the most important rate-limiting enzyme for the various pathways. You should know this table by heart. Any question coming from this table, you should be quickly able to correctly answer the question. Then compartments involved in a pathway. This is another favorite question of the examiners, where they will ask for the compartments. For example, the glycolysis and HMP shunt will occur in the cytoplasm, but the beta oxidation and the ketogenesis will occur in the mitochondria. The gluconeogenesis will require both the mitochondria and the cytoplasm, as well as the urea cycle. So these are some questions talking about the compartments involved in the pathway. Another favorite question of the examiners is the enzyme inhibition, particularly the reversible type of enzyme inhibition, where they ask you about the associated graphs. So associated graphs are given, and they will ask you to identify which type of inhibition is shown in the graph. Sometimes you can club it with the drugs, and they can ask you which of the following drugs follows the enzyme inhibition shown in the graph. So identifying the graph and which inhibition is being shown is very, very, very important. I have talked about the tricks how to do this by quickly identifying the common points with the uninhibited graph, which will help you to identify the type of enzyme inhibition. And very, very important, the inborn errors of metabolism. I've listed the various inborn errors of metabolism which are commonly asked in order of importance, most likely to be asked. So most important, most likely to be asked is the cluster of phenylalanine tyrosine metabolism, where you have the phenylketonuria, you have the tyrosinemias, you have the Hawkinsinuria, you have the alkaptonuria. These are some of the most likely asked questions, along with the typical findings. For example, urinary odor, urinary finding, those things are additionally asked. What are the metabolites in the urine? So those will be questions coming from here. Then second most important is the glycogen storage disorders, where you will very commonly get the clinical question. Clinical question is there. Sometimes it is a long question, and you are either asked to identify the type of disorder, or if that type of disorder is sometimes mentioned and you are asked to mention the enzyme deficiency in that particular disorder. So you have to keep that in mind. Glycogen storage disorder is very, very common. Almost always we get one question from the glycogen storage disorders. And then we have the sphingolipidosis, particularly the Gaucher's, the tape sacs, and the Niemann-Pick. These three are the most commonly asked in the exam. So you should know a little bit more detail about them. Gaucher's particularly because it is the most common glycogen storage disorder, sorry, most common lysosomal storage disorder, and it is one of the first conditions for which the enzyme replacement therapy was made available. So it is another favorite of the examiners. Then mucopolysaccharidosis can be asked sometimes, the Hurler-Hunter syndrome, but less frequently we get the questions from here. Then what else you should know? Lesch-Nyhan syndrome, very important. Almost every alternate year we get the question on the Lesch-Nyhan syndrome. The Refsum disease and the Zellweger syndrome, part of the same spectrum of disorder. Almost always you'll get the question from this. Sometimes you might get both of them. Recently in the INA seat, in the CET, in the two sessions we had, in the first session Refsums, and in the second session we had the question of the Zellweger's as well. So these are two another important clinical cases which are being asked in your exam. Then the regulation of the pathways, the regulatory molecules in the pathways, the target for regulation in the pathways, these are another important favorite topic for the examiners. Generally, we have this table in our notebook where we're talking about the regulatory molecules and the regulation. So must revise that table before you go for the exam. 21st amino acid, cellulose, very, very important, very favorite of the examiners. In the last 4 years, we have seen the question coming from this almost every year. So they'll either ask you about the codon, they'll either ask you which of the following enzymes contains the cellulose. They can straightforward ask you which of them is the 21st amino acid. They can ask you the metal which is present here, which is the selenium. The element which is present here is the selenium. Alright, so these are some of the questions coming from the 21st amino acid. And then you have the acid-base disorder. Almost always we get a question on acid-base disorder. Clinical cases given, the findings of the pH, the PCO2 and the bicarbonate concentration are provided, and you are asked to identify the type of acid-base disorder. Sometimes you'll be asked to identify the compensation, whether the compensation is there or not. Okay, so you should be able to identify those both. We have commonly discussed this using a flow chart. If in doubt, you can go back to my videos on the doctorals and see them there. Then another favorite question of the examiners, the special products of amino acids. Can't afford to miss this. Almost always we get a question on the special products of amino acid, either in terms of the tyrosine or the tryptophan, or talking about from where you get the nitric oxide, from where you get the GABA, from where you get the other special products, for example, creatine. So these are very, very important questions. And lastly, we get either the functions of lipoproteins, the functions of the apolipoproteins, or the associated disorders, particularly the hyperlipoproteinemia type 1 and type 2A. These are the two commonly asked questions from the lipoproteins and the associated disorders. So these are the very, very vital, not missable topics which you must revise before you go for the exam. Maybe I'll give you some more good to know topics a few days later, but these are the ones which you have to make sure that you've covered before you go for the exam. So stay focused. Last few days we are just near the crossing line. Finishing line is very close by. Don't lose focus and keep revising. Don't listen to anyone. Don't read anything new. Only revise what you've already read, and try to avoid the social media. Try to avoid some confusing information that is coming in, some rumors, exam extension, some changes in eligibility. Those are not your concern. Your concern is to stay focused and go for the exam. If there is a change in date of exam, it will be for everyone. So don't listen to those points. Stay focused, keep revising, and just prepare for the 5th of March as of now. If there are any changes, we'll update you. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much.